The last one got cut off, and I don't know what happened on that. So I figured I would do another one and finish the discussion that we started. Um, a lot of things to talk about concerning group harassment, a lot of things that targets have to deal with. And there's just no end to getting in to all the aspects of gang stalking. Okay. There's a small percentage of people out there who experience gang stalking. And that's why it's such a difficult scenario for the target. Not a whole lot of people that you have to relate with. Of course, now we have the targeted individual community. Unfortunately, it's been infiltrated, and I could give out some names, but I'm not going to do that because, in fact, that's one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight because there are a lot of little games that targets play. There are a lot of little scenarios that targets deal with, and in the community of targeted individuals, of course, that's not going to be left off limits, right? Nothing else is concerning gang stalking. You know, whether you're out in public or dealing with people at your workplace or your family scenario or whatever, there's always people around, little finger puppets that are going to get involved and play games with you. Okay, that's it's right along our our subject, and we talked about a lot of things earlier. We touched on some of the games that targets play and some of the things that they run into. We even went into the poisoning aspect of it. I had or the covert drugging and tampering and all the little games that targets play. I had a question where there was someone who's been experiencing some things, and they asked me, should I go get this stuff tested? Well, that really plays into what I said. Or not a whole lot of people experience gang stalking. It'd be different if you knew what was going on. Well, if you knew what was being used, and a lot of targets will deal with that. Sometimes it's just there to mentally mess with you. I referenced the thing that I dealt with, and that was a lot of seeds of paranoia, a lot of suggestions. Targets deal with that, and then of course there's the stimuli that comes along with it, and of course you're going to connect the two together. It's the correlation effect. You get street theater where people are, giving you suggestions about poisonings or people getting cancer and all that stuff, or you're dealing with directed conversations or little games, or all of a sudden things are popping up for you to look at, whether it's on your phone or something else that has to do with little things. And there's a theme, you know, and then of course you deal with the stimuli. And maybe instead of rearranging your house when they break in, there's you know, weird substances or whatever. You're dealing with things. Maybe your door handles are really sticky. All of a sudden, whatever it is, you have a hard time getting off. I had that one too, where I was using automotive soap, man, trying to get rid of this stuff. I don't know what it was. They were putting it on everything, and but luckily that was right around the time the pandemic started and everybody started wearing gloves, so I didn't look too freaky trying to avoid it. I don't even know what it was. Made my skin all red and rashy. And it was weird. There's a lot of weird things targets deal with, or maybe it's a powdery substance. I've heard a lot of targets talk about that, like a white powder or whatever, and it makes your skin itch and you have all these weird effects. I've heard a lot of weird things, but the point is, it's that invasion. There's the correlation. There's the games that targets deal with, and of course, when they try to explain it or they go get it tested or whatever, like I referenced, then what happens? Well, why? Who's doing it? What's going on? You have all those questions to answer. And it's just, it's just there's never a reasonable way to explain something this crazy, this out of the ordinary, something that affects such a small portion of the population. And it fits right along with the criteria of psychiatry. What do? You know, I don't know. Not to mention the fact that a lot of those things follow the synergistic plot, where it'd be hard enough if it was some kind of straightforward chemical, but of course there's gaslighting, there's games involved, and people will deal with synergistic reactions. There's multiple chemicals or substances mixed together to create a reaction or the desired effect, whether it's to gaslight the target individual, cause them anxiety, memory loss, dysfunction, organ failure, who knows? Or maybe it's just there to freak them out. You know, but what do you do? I mean, you can't really go get that tested, and it follows right into the process of discrediting the target. Now they're telling people about something that you know I don't know, 97% of the population is not experiencing, uh, that fits the criteria of psychiatry, that doesn't seem to have a rational, logical explanation, and usually is involving disinformation and other things the target has been sensitized to. And of course, they just look crazy. Well, we've got 8 people out there. We've got some people. Bora, welcome back. Yeah, I don't know what happened, man. I have no idea. I was just taking a break. I had to go see what was going on. Uh, and I'm not even going to go into that. But I was getting a lot of those notifications, and I was talking about that. It's one thing to reach out and talk to somebody, and that was one of my hopes in creating the channel. But sometimes it doesn't work out. You know, I quit doing that. So, and that was kind of an example of why all those notifications that you guys heard when I was on the live stream were representative of the kind of harassment that you could deal with. Unfortunately, the individual involved probably, is dealing with some personal issues that have nothing to do with them being some type of gang stalker or anything. And it's just the confusion that targets deal with, the confusion that is involved in everybody that deals with harassment can sometimes be a real hindrance for the targeted individual to come together. Not to mention the fact that you've got shills and infiltrators and people are always trying to do that, which goes into what we're going to talk about. And there are a lot of games that targets play, and a lot of that stuff involves the setup. Okay, and it's classic, right? And you guys have seen probably some of it. You get those guys out there; they usually have fairly small channels, and they're always involved in fighting and trying to, I don't know, discredit one another, or calling people perps or fighting. And it's just like, the thing about it is some of those people are connected and it's just a game to draw people in, right? So, of course they can't be involved with each other because they're the ones fighting, but it's a game, man. It's a game, and it involves a type of chaotic environmental stimuli that just makes them kind of crazy looking, in the sense that they usually end up coming after everybody eventually, whoever they are. I've had that happen where a lot of these people will come out and start attacking me. Dr. Defacto is a gang stalker, or he's a perp, or whatever, and then, some of them will try to draw me out into this game, right? And a lot of times, especially with the infiltrators, they're going to gather information and stuff like that. They might start threatening to dox you, or but the thing is in this little dynamic that is just, it plays into a lot of different areas that targets deal with. This game, it's a type of culpability, and I've talked about the fact that there's gaslighting involved in all the games that you're going to play as a target. Okay, and they want you to internalize what is happening. Okay, whether they're using your character defects against you, whether you got a substance abuse problem, whether you're starting to get an anger problem for all the crap you're dealing with as a target individual, or whatever. And then, they'll provoke you and you might react or whatever, but now the gloves are off and you have to internalize the attack as justified or whatever. This is why we got to do this to you, or whatever. And they want you to engage, right? But first, the target will usually be encircled in that scenario, and they're gonna triangulate the target. They're gonna play little games with them, and it plays into the dynamics that we're going to talk about. because usually every situation the target gets involved in. Hi, Mr. Beachwalker. Glad you could show up. And you're right in the beginning too. Uh, the, you know the dynamic that you're going to be dealing with is that game dynamic. Okay, there's ego is written all over it, man. All the things that involve any part of the I don't know the way that you've been raised to compete, right? To stand up for yourself, to not be oppressed, and all those. It's going to play into it. And of course, you're gonna be getting ganged up on. It's classic. It's why they call it gang stalking. But as much as possible, they're going to try and throw that in there because ultimately there's gaslighting and manipulation as the motive, and the manipulation involves getting you emotional. And of course, the game dynamic means that you're losing, right? Or it means that you deserve it now, right? Because that's the gaslighting part of it. When you get the encirclement, when you deal with the little shills or the perps, or when you're at your workplace harassment scenario or whatever, they're going to try and bait you, and they're going to use different techniques. And we're going to talk about those. I've mentioned it before. And concerning the people out there that are playing those games with the channels, and then we're fighting each other, and but really they're getting together behind the scenes, and they're doing this stuff, and you can see that they're doing interviews on all the channels. They always have that common theme, and that is that they're always talking about all the people that are involved in some of the obvious people that are not pretending to be targets, right? And you know who they are. That they're fighting them or whatever. They're engaged in this little frivolous battle amongst each other, or the obvious attackers of the targeted individual community. You know who they are. But the thing is that there's going to be bait. Okay, that's one example. And it doesn't always involve those clowns. Um, it involves all the scenarios you're going to be dealing with, whether it's a workplace or maybe even in your family, social circle, all that stuff. And there's going to be bait, and it can even involve strangers. And usually, the bait to get you in this game dynamic, the setup for internalization, the gaslighting, all these things. Sometimes it will involve just something as simple as unorthodox behavior or stalling tactics, right? And the reason it's bait is because there's really, when you see someone playing that game with you, or they're being illogical, sometimes illogical behavior is going to be the bait, because what are you tempted to do then? Well, what's your deal? Why are you doing that? And for some reason, at that point in time, which happens to everybody, it's happened to me, you forget what you're really dealing with. And that is the salient landscape of a targeted individual where you cannot expect logic. You cannot expect people to be reasonable. And you certainly can't count on justice from the people around you. And you never know who's involved. Okay. But it's easy to forget. Okay. So whether you're at a store, whether you're dealing with a stranger, whether you're at an appointment, whether you're dealing with someone in a scenario where they have something that you need, or where you're dealing with people at work or whatever, that type of bait is going to be there. And of course, the target falls into, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What's up with you? And of course, the ball is rolling now. Okay, they've got you emotional. They're going to yank your chain. And then, of course, there's going to be accusations that follow that, illogical behavior, unorthodox behavior, or there's going to be unprovoked attacks. You could get into the theatrical behavior, where that, depending on what the target's been sensitized to, that can follow the themes of things that you've been conditioned to or whatever. Oh, I don't even know who you are. But of course they do. It's a little game. And if you say anything now, well, that just goes right into the accusation. Well, I don't even know you. I don't know what do you mean? And of course, there's plausible deniability in all these techniques because they're covert. Um, I've already talked about the irrational behavior, the emotional manipulation that comes out of that. And of course, the idea is to get an emotional response out of the target. And the thing that you got to remember, and I talked about this in the last live stream, is that it's death by a thousand cuts. And the reason it's important to remember that all the time is that these things have reciprocity. Okay. And you're moving into a crescendo, because if they don't do that, if they don't use the orchestrated manipulation that's involved in gang stalking to create an emotional response, to manipulate the target, to provoke the target into doing something, they really got nothing. Whatever it is, whether it's to believe something that's not true, whether it's to freak out, whether it's to go on the run, whether it's to attack someone, or call the police and try to tell them something that's not believable or whatever. They want a response, and it usually involves a type of crescendo, incorporating all these little things that come together in an event that causes the target to either be stressed out, come close to a nervous breakdown, or get angry and do something, or whatever. And maximum effect is that you freak out on somebody that's not even involved, because that is the maximum fun of the crescendo effect. And I've talked about that before. There's a lot of things involved in a crescendo, and targets will be dealing with that. They will, uh, you know, they will give significance to things that may not even be involved in gang stalking, because of the crescendo effect, because it involves such a, I don't know, a type of meticulous, incremental system of attacks. Okay. And it comes from multiple angles. You are dealing with this stuff from all directions, and it all just adds up. Okay. It's like a meter. If you were to calculate all the little things that you deal with when you're dealing with all these forms of manipulation, you're going to see that meter rising. You're going to see all these little things, whether it's your anger meter, your patience meter, your happy meter, all those little things that are there, and you can calculate it, and you can see it. In fact, I've even done that before. I challenge people out there, when you're starting to have those attacks come at you, you could have a little chart or something, and you could say, well, okay, we're at 3 points right now. My patience is literally starting to wear thin. I'm dealing with this. I can kind of see where this is going. You got all these little categories where you can see they're coming after you. Okay. And all these, multifaceted, angles that are coming at the targeted individual might not even have anything to do with the puppets. Okay. Because remember, it's death by a thousand cuts, and they can come in from all different angles, and the target is going to be dealing with that to the point where you're going to be moved into a place where you're going to react. Okay. Because without that, it's worthless. Okay. None of these things are going to be productive. None of it matters, unless they get you to internalize it, unless they can gaslight you, unless they can provoke you to attacking someone who's preferably innocent, or at least appears innocent. And then they can accuse you and discredit you, whatever, get you on paper, whatever they're going to do, or possibly incarcerate you, or get you to, just freak out and kill somebody or yourself or something. Okay. That's what they need. Or they need you to get to that place where you split. We've talked about that before. And that can happen. And it all is incremental. It all involves that crescendo effect. And that's when you get into a place where you see targets talking about something that even people in the target individual community, unless they're new, because they're more susceptible, will think is nuts. Okay. And I try to help those people out, because they're not crazy. They're not hallucinating. They're not imagining these things. They just don't know how to put this little crescendo orchestration together. And it takes a long time to do it. Everybody makes the mistakes. It's like that incremental manipulation that people will deal with. Maybe they're having dreams. Maybe they're having sleep deprivation. They're dealing with all these little facets of manipulation. People are, attacking them with street theater. There's workplace harassment. There's all these things that are eating away at them. And it starts out, maybe at night, and then it moves into the morning. You have all these little invisible buttons, believe it or not. And that's how I look at it. It sounds ridiculous, but there are things involved that are spiritual too. And it could be technological as well. So anybody who's dealing with the V2K, or dealing with all these things, all of a sudden they feel uneasy. All of a sudden they might have a hard time relaxing. It all plays a part. And then you have different other, emotions and so on and so forth, combined with the suggestions, combined with the external stimuli. And then you get a new target who doesn't understand, and they move across this whole, landscape they're in. They're having these attacks, they're having these emotions, and then they they have a type of deja vu. They go around the corner and they see an accident scene or something. Okay. And then, they've heard things like that. And the target individual, what do they get? It's there for you. It's there for you. It's there just for you. But it's not. It's not there for you. Okay. But that's the kind of thing that they use, the crescendo effect. In that type of scenario, what's the goal? To get the target to form a false proposition in their mind to discredit them, or even possibly later make them believe they're crazy with things that are just simply not logistically possible. Okay, out of all the phenomena that targeted individuals deal with, there are a lot of things that are explainable, and some of them are just correlated together and they're not true. But the crescendo effect is used to get that target into the place of emotional state, or in a place where they will accept a proposition or react emotionally or be provoked. Now I'm going to go back into the comments. I'm going to see what's going on. I've been going on for a long time. And for all I know, there's a perp in the chat. And of course, I didn't get my reading glasses again. Gosh. You got to be kidding me. You'd think that's a good example right there. You would think, as many live streams as I've done, that would be the first thing that I would do, man, is to get, what did it take me, like 2 weeks or a month or something just to get the reading glasses? And now I forget to bring them over to oh my gosh. Anyway. Well, finally, sorry about that, guys. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Beachwalker, it did. And I got it up to 80 degrees. I'm sitting around with a pina colada right now. I'm just kidding. I've got on a Hawaiian a pair of underwear. No. But it's seriously hot in here. I don't know. It could have something to do with the other dwelling that's got the water shut off. You never know. But it's 80 degrees in here, man. There's definitely, it's not coming from this angle. Thanks for asking, though. Let's see here. Okay. They target vulnerable populations. In other words, wounded inner child dependency. But what the? Oh, the cat's freaking out. Hold on. Lay down. She's really freaking out today, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, back to this. She's making noise. She can hear me. She's outside in the living room. She's getting too frisky. She's been inside too long. The wintertime really gets to the animals after a while. And it's her playtime. I probably should have done that before I came on. Okay, vulnerable populations. In other words, wounded inner child dependency, but also self-injury. Yeah, the wounded inner child, that's interesting. I talked about the incremental stuff, and even the things that targets deal with before they experience overt harassment play into this whole thing. There's a psychological soup, a type of medium that targets deal with. And it starts when they're little kids. It doesn't necessarily always involve overt gang stalking, because the equation that you're being attacked with is the same for everybody. It's just being turned up for the target, like in the example when you deal with that ego manipulation or the game dynamic where you're losing, right? There's nothing you can do. What are you going to do? How are you going to fix all these things? And it's, if you let that get to you, it's going to really bother you. Nicholas Boserman, welcome to the live stream. They live to call the cops on you all day. I see a suspicious guy walking down the street. Yeah. Sometimes that'll happen. Or you get the welfare checks, which I've talked about that before. It was ridiculous, guys. When I was out that trailer, man, they would do the welfare checks, of course, late at night. And, there was multiple ridiculous ones. The cops were like, what the hell is going on? I said, why are you asking me? Obviously there's nothing going on. I was accused of shooting guns, selling drugs. It was just ridiculous. The cops were called out there. I don't even know how many times, man. Supposedly I was shooting a gun off in the property. Then supposedly I was selling drugs. There was all kinds of, then there was just, we're worried about this guy, so we're going to do a welfare check. And they do that. And, usually there are other things going on, but uh, targets will deal with that. And I've talked about the fact that if you're a targeted individual, and you know, living a life where you don't give anybody any excuse to involve themselves in your existence is important. It was like the comment that I was talking about, where the guy was asking me about testing things, for poisoning or whatever. You can do whatever you want on that. I mean, the problem is you have to answer all those questions. And anytime you're dealing with gang stalking, it's so covert, and sometimes it can involve a dimensional perspective where these things. I mean, it's literally like having hindsight when you're doing this. It's totally unfair for you as a target to be dealing with this stuff because I mean, not only you're dealing with that, but you're outnumbered. But when you get into that scenario, why, who's doing it, so on and so forth, it's just not going to work. You're discredited, you're outnumbered, and when you play that game, you're taking a chance. You're also playing into that strategy, and then you're going to get emotional because we'll say they do test it. We'll say people believe you and they look into it, but it's eventually going to fizzle out more than likely. Uh, Anytime a targeted individual calls the police, it usually turns out to be something uh, pretty negative for them. And when other people call the police on targets, well, depending on what happens, depending on what you're doing, it could go badly. Okay. In fact, there's a lot of people out there doing those, Second Amendment videos and stuff like that. If you're a target, I would recommend you don't play that game with the police. Okay, that's just my personal advice. You got enough problems, man. When I deal with police, uh, I pretty much do whatever they say within reason. If they want to enter your house without a warrant or something like that, try to be polite, but don't let them do it because you don't know what's going to happen. The same thing with anything else. I had a guy stop me out in Nevada one time coming back. I used to do fiber optic, central office tech, and I had all my equipment with me, and I'm driving. It was out. It wasn't that far from I think it was Little Vegas or something like Mini Vegas or whatever it was. It was out there. I can't remember. There was a bunch of casinos, but it was a small town. And this dude pulls me over, and this big. It was, it looked like a sheriff's vehicle, right? It was painted white and black, had the lights on it and everything. And the guy he didn't have a traditional badge. He just had a patch. And I don't know, maybe they have that out in the desert. I don't know. But he was acting very suspicious. He walks up to the vehicle and he says, "You know why I pulled you over?" And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, "No, I don't know why you pulled me over." And he points at his badge and gets real close to my face. And he goes, "Because I'm a police officer. That's why. You see that badge? Do you see it, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, what would I do?" And he goes, "You got a headlight out." Okay. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But then he started drilling me. He wanted me to get out of the vehicle. He wanted, of course, my license, registration, and everything. So I gave him all that stuff. And then he comes back over to me, sit out, stand in front of the I had a Blazer, stand in front of the vehicle, and it's getting dark. It's starting to get windy. And he goes, "Well, you didn't give me your registration." I said, "Yeah, I did." And he's walking around, and I said, "You must have lost it. It's probably blown around in the ditch." And he walks in front of the headlight, and I can see this little folded up piece of paper. All right. And his between his gun and his belt. And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, I forgot I put it there." And so the games had already begun. He had me out there for 2 hours, man. And he wanted to search my vehicle. And I made the mistake of letting him do it, man. He tore everything apart. He went through, there was underwear, everything was just all over the place. And, he was asking me all these questions. "Do you have any alcohol? Do you have any weapons?" And everything, "Do you have any drugs?" I'm like, "No." And he finds this warm wine cooler that I didn't even know about, man, under the passenger seat. Who knows how long it had been there? I don't drink wine coolers, not since high school. And I'm like, "Dude, I had no idea that was even there." He goes, "Well, yeah." But he tore everything apart. And then he goes, "Well, yeah, I ain't done with you yet." And he comes back and he's got this clipboard. And he goes, "I want you to follow me into a place. We're going to take your vehicle apart. We want to search it." And I said, "I'm not going to let you do that. I said, we're done unless you got a warrant. So there, who knows who he was? He probably, for all I know, he might not even been a cop. You know, who knows? It was this stretch of highway. There was no traffic, man, and it was pretty weird. But I try to be compliant, and I've seen that happen a lot. Targets are different. You're in a different world than other people. They can get away with getting lippy to the cops or whatever. But as a target, I wouldn't recommend you do that. And a lot of you guys are experiencing that type of persecution. And I've mentioned before that when you're in a smaller community, it can really get bad. But if you get on the wrong side of the law, man, that's not going to work. And if you do anything wrong, man, well, you better be ready to get prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Bad mojo on that one. Go back into the comments, just take a look and see what's going on. Well, Nicholas Boserman says no, it wasn't up in Reno. It was below that. I can't remember where I was coming out of. It probably wasn't that far away from there though, actually, dude. Because I'm thinking I came out of Sacramento probably, so it was probably just down below that, actually. Yeah, so it wasn't that far away from there. Actually, that's interesting. Yeah, I went through Reno on the way up there. Yeah, it could have been. Could have been, dude. All I know is the guy scared the hell out of me. But he had me out there for 2 hours. It was ridiculous, man. Well, it was Little Vegas where I ended up getting my headlight replaced. Do you know where that is? I'm pretty sure that was the name of the city or the town. It was a real small town. It had amenities, a grocery store and everything, but it just had one little shop. And the dude was hilarious. It fixed my life, man. He had these big stigmatism glasses on. Oh, we're going to get this fixed. I'll tell you. Oh my gosh. I dropped that. He dropped the screwdriver in there. He couldn't grab that. I mean, it was just one thing after another. It's like being in a Stephen King movie, I swear. There's just no way these people can be real. That's the stuff that's going through your mind when you're dealing with this, man. Yeah. Well, they tried to play a game with me, and there was a guy. I don't know if you guys watched it's a documentary about a cop. I think it was in Florida that was planting amphetamines on people. He'd pull them over. Everything seemed legitimate. Do you mind if I look through the vehicle? I know you ain't got nothing. You mind if I do a little check, Mama? And then they would let him in there. And, of course, I found this in your vehicle. I'm not saying it's yours. It tested positive for methamphetamine. And, these people end up going to jail, losing their kids, losing their jobs, man. There's a wild documentary. Check it out, when you guys got time, because it's just one of those things that you got to remember. And who knows what's going to happen. And, I think that's even a technique when you get into, whistleblowers and stuff like that. All of a sudden they've got, an 8 ball of Coke under their seat. Yeah. Oh, where'd this come from? You end up in jail or dead. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was the one then, dude. I know all I remember is it was dark when I was going into that town, and there was a lot of those. I think they were lynx cats, huge back legs on them, running all over out there. Big gray, like bobcat looking things. Yeah, they're pretty wild. They must be all over out there. At least they used to be. That was back in the '90s, so that was like 1999 or something. Anyway, getting back into what we were talking about as the targeted individual. Well, I wasn't a mountain lion. No, they were small. They were lynxes. They're gray cats with the ears with the. I'm pretty sure that's what they were. They have those weird looking big back legs on them. I don't think they were mountain lions. They looked about the size of a bobcat to me. So you've got the game dynamic. You have the emotional manipulation. Um, of course, they want to provoke the target. They have the unfair scenario, of course, and that can involve encirclement or infiltration, a manufactured justification, which goes into the things the target is provoked to do. So if you engage these people, right, and there's the bait, right, the irrational behavior, the illogical behavior, the obvious, injustice and activity that is going on that any normal person could say, "Hey, what's up with that?" And they would be called out in any normal scenario. There's people aren't going to put up with that for some reason. When it comes to the target individual, you're dealing with all that stuff, and there's no logic, there's no reasonability. There's people in on it, and for some reason, that they always seem to get away with it. But in the process of that, if you give in, then they're gonna try and accuse you or use it as a type of manufactured justification to do who knows what. Because really, that's what the target is dealing with or whatever. People are getting accused, like Nicholas Bosman said, he's being accused of being a pedophile or whatever. Obviously, that has nothing to do with reality. Manufactured justification. It's the same with or it's something from your past or something. Well, we heard about you. We know what you did when you were 3. It's like, what? What are you talking about? But, maximum effect. They want to draw you into a scenario that is current, that they can point a finger at you and play all these little games with you. It's the way it works. It's bait, and it becomes obvious after the target deals with the new targets. They don't know. They don't know they're being baited. And it can be, a very difficult process because you don't know what you're dealing with. I remember when I first started dealing with this, especially the workplace harassment, I figured it out, man. But I was like, what the, it was crazy. It was nuts. I mean, you wonder how this stuff is working. And the only thing you can assume is that, somebody has called up these people that I'm working with. They must be paid. They're paying them money. Sometimes that kind of thing can happen, you know. But then, of course, the targeted individual keeps moving through the landscape of the targeted individual, and it's exponential, depending on who you are, depending on what lengths that you go to escape the persecution. You're going to see that it's usually a lot bigger than that. But I remember that. I mean, I was like, what? What the hell are you thinking? I mean, I would be taking orders. I worked at a pizza place when this stuff really got hot and heavy. And it was ridiculous, man. I'd be taking orders. I'd be working the computer and on the phone with somebody, and they would come up and start yelling, you know, or they'd grab a hold of me. One person came up and started writing on me with a permanent marker, you know, and they were all in it. They're all laughing, and then people were coming over to my house and dismantling my vehicle. I'd come outside, and the window would be, the automatic window would be knocked out, and you could tell somebody was in there. And then there was all kinds of things. I mean, you're talking about like $1,000 worth of repairs, right? And then I've had this happen not too long ago, where people come up to you and said, "Oh, I saw somebody driving your vehicle around, and it was in the middle of the night. What were you doing out there?" I'm like, what? I had a neighbor come up and do that to me about 6 years ago. Yeah. Was that you driving your vehicle around? So that then I had to try and figure what was going on with that, you know. And I actually caught some people doing that too back in the 90s. All right. And the only way that they would have done the damage to the vehicle was if they were out, four-wheeling or, driving over curbs at 35, 40 miles an hour or something. I mean, just ridiculous. When a neighbor comes up to you and says they see people, commandeering your vehicles and doing all this stuff, it's like, what? And you think at that point that you have, a justified right, or that everything will work out if you maybe call the police or, try to call these people out or say, but it doesn't work that way. And new targets are going to be baited. And the disillusionment and the confusion that comes out of those reactions. And then, of course, they just have fun with it. The perps love it, man. They laugh their ass off. They're over there just laughing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, we can do that. Oh, you're going to figure that out. And it just never ends. I'm going to go back into the comments to see what's going on. Mats and Miles, welcome to the live stream. Okay, let's see here. GoPro 2999 says, I'm not ever concerned of drugs being planted. That's why it's smart as targeted individuals never to become involved in smoking or alcohol. I think that's a good idea either way. Yeah, that's definitely a good protocol. Absolutely. Um, but the stuff that I was talking about with that cop over in Florida, these people, they didn't have any history of anything, and they were not testing positive for methamphetamines or anything else. I'm not saying that you got to worry about anything. I'm just saying, what are you going to do? But that's a good point though, GoPro, because if you are doing that, the likelihood of something like that, is going to go down dramatically. But if you're out playing games and getting drunk or hanging out with the wrong people or whatever, and something happens, well, it's going to look legitimate. So I absolutely agree with that. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Mats and Miles, I'm from a small town where I lived in a house for over 40 years. And it seemed as though everyone is in on this stuff. I swear every single car brights me, even when I'm in my car in the driveway. Yep. The targets are going to deal with that. It's that type of atmosphere. And that's part of the crescendo effect too. Um, and it has reciprocity. It's like, what the hell? It is. It's like being in a horror movie. You know, it's like watching something from the Twilight Zone, man. It is. That's the kind of stuff that targets deal with. And I'll admit it, and I've talked about this many times. Is I don't think I'd believe it unless I really would have seen it for myself, because it's such a flip on reality, man. It just doesn't seem possible. The world that you grew up in, the things that you learned, that whole scenario, you have to awaken from that. And then, of course, it's like that stuff I talked about a couple days ago. You find out where you really are. You find out the truth about the world, about people, and about what could really happen to someone, and why some of the people out there that are crazy are considered crazy, and that they aren't. They're not really crazy, man. They're telling the truth. That was something that really freaked me out one day. I was thinking about what we're talking about concerning that, and I was watching this documentary on factitious disorder, and this girl was getting, she kind of got baited into telling her story. And of course, she believed it because I believed it was true. That she was diagnosed with factitious disorder. And I think, and I could be wrong about the definition of that disorder, is it's kind of like schizophrenia, but it involves information that people, can't really disprove. It's meticulously put together in a way that, that seems realistic, right? So, typically when people are diagnosed with schizophrenia, it's like, the things that target individuals deal with, right? Like I talked about with the proposition, people are staging accident scenes for me. Oh, really? Oh, okay. You're crazy. Only a crazy person would come up with that. Well, that's not true. There's ways that people come up to those conclusions, and they're not crazy. It's the crescendo, it's the manipulation, it's the atmosphere around the target. But so there's ways that these things work, and the fact that people do kind of screw up and start reading into things, and those things become involved in their story, make them look even crazier, but they're not. And so, but this lady was telling, yeah. So tell us exactly what happened to you, and when did all these things start? And it was, and she started, but she was like 5 years old. She was a classic targeted individual, and she's talking about all this stuff. And for people who are diagnosed with schizophrenia, like I said, usually it's obvious. right? They expect you to, be saying something like "little green men" or walking through walls and talking to me, or "Oh, you're obviously hallucinating." But this girl had none of those things involved. Okay, and her story was the classic, very integrated persecutory delusion, right? Which, in my opinion, was true. And so I'm watching this, and of course, the person's doing the interview. Why would all these people do this to you? What do you think the motive would be? And of course, this girl is, trying to explain, and she's coming up with excuses. And she didn't know. She had no idea that she was a targeted individual. She's like, well, he must be jealous of me, and they're people that, of course, they want you to believe those things because it feeds into that delusion of grandeur and persecutory delusion criteria that's in psychiatry. But when I listened to that girl and I listened to everything she was talking, I believed everything that she said. And it was true, I bet. I bet everything that she gave, and it was a documentary about, the factitious disorder, and there was some other things involved in that documentary. But man, she wasn't crazy, you know. And of course, the person that did the interview, of course they're going to analyze the testimony, and oh, these people really believe this stuff, and they sound credible, but it's true. And there's a way that people are crazy. And that's the other thing that you learned when you're a target is a lot of the people that you thought were crazy before aren't. They're being manipulated, whether it's people who are hearing voices or people who are, having that symptomatology of a persecutory delusion or a delusion of grandeur. It's just working out in a way where they can't decipher it. And that's one of the reasons why I make these videos. I mean, you hear some of the things that targets talk about, and I know they're not lying. But you have to understand how they are coming up with this stuff, how they're forming the propositions, how some of these things can be logistically possible. How does it work, when someone buys into some of the themes and starts processing information in a personal way and they become discredited? They look insane. They think the radio is talking to them. They think the people on the news broadcast are staring through the TV into their home because they're themes. Because like I've talked about before, and it sounds nuts, but the mechanism that you are dealing with that is used in gang stalking was always there. Okay, all these things are already out there. The only way that people see them is when they start, getting caught up in the themes, and all these things are brought into their world, and they experience the sensitization, they experience the conditioning, and they get attacked with this stuff. They start experiencing the directed conversations and the innuendos, and then it all makes sense. The keywords, all those things start coming out. I talked about that with that guy up in the hospital. I've referenced him before. He got chased down to Mexico. They stole the money out of his bank account. And he was shot up. I think it was within Vega. He didn't eat. He didn't even do anything for like 3 days. The first words out of his mouth were, "I'm not crazy." And he's like, "Well, I don't think you understand. It's even like the people on the television. It's like they know. It's like everybody knows." Well, that's the way it's designed. And there is a way that people can look crazy, but they're not. It's pretty intense. I'm going to go back into the comments here because a lot of people would think that you know Mats and Miles is just having symptoms of schizophrenia. Well, what do you mean everybody's briding you, even in your driveway? What are you talking about? Why? Well, it's the same thing. That's what targets deal with. And then there can even be the example of where somebody's accidentally doing it, but at the point where you've already been attacked with it, well, you just end up reading into it. It's not even your fault at that point. Okay, Nicholas Bosmerman's got a good example here. Sorry if I skipped anybody's comments. I'm just trying to go through this stuff and deal with some stress, and I'm trying to put it into something productive, guys. So please bear with me. I've been, targeted for decades, and it's had its effects. They sent a 14-year-olds to me to say some explicit stuff. I would just stand there with my jaw drop, going, "What did you just say that?" Yep. And I've seen a lot of weird stuff like that too. That's a classic. example of something that will happen to a targeted individual that can be used to either gaslight you or discredit you. Because when you say it, nobody's going to believe it, and especially when you're dealing with somebody who's a minor. I've even heard of people dealing with younger people, and now you just like look like a complete lunatic, right? You're dangerous. You get into that with Gorilla Boy. You guys are dangerous. I'm gonna tell you what, that's my dog in the fight. Well, whatever. And it's a powerful technique to use that, or old people, or whatever. Some of the attackers that targeted individuals deal with, it just fuels into the picture of that type of diagnostic criteria. But I've seen it for myself, man. I would even be afraid to tell you guys all the things that I've seen because it's just nuts. Okay, I'm just reading through the comments here. Yeah, GoPro says he's seen it too, but in the case that we are the prey to these younger perps, yeah, and it can get really freaky, man. It can get really wild. Bora Bora, would it be possible for you to put the link in that video in the comment section afterwards, Doc? Are you talking about the documentary for the cop planting drugs in Florida? Is that the one you're asking about? I don't know if he was or not. Are you talking about that, Bora Bora? You want the link to the documentary? I mean, I could put it in there. That's not a problem. I was just going to say, if for me, when I found it, cop planting drugs, Florida, or cop, framing people with methamphetamines, it should come right up. But I'll put it in there. It's not a problem. Nicholas Bosman says when you're blasted on meth, and I must have missed that one, so there must be a dialogue. So I'm just going to leave that alone. Okay. Okay. Well, we've only got we're up to 25 people on the live stream, and I would imagine there's a lot of people that missed everything that we're talking about. We're talking about the targeted individuals being set up, the internalization that is required for the manufactured justification of this activity that targeted individuals deal with, for the gaslighting, convincing them that somehow they deserve these things and it's justified. Okay. And that could go into a lot of different aspects for targets. And there's always bait involved. There's the type of encirclement around the target, there's infiltration. And then, of course, there's even random things that targets will deal with where you're baited with illogical behavior, with unorthodox behavior, with unreasonable behavior, with unprovoked attacks. There's all kinds of things that happen to targets, and of course, what's the normal person going to do? Why'd you do that? You can't do that to me, and they do. And as soon as you play that game with them, then the gloves are off, and other people become involved, and you can be accused, and then they'll draw you into the light. And if nothing else, even if don't get provoked into punching somebody in the face, or making a scene in public or whatever. They're still going to get that emotional response. At least that's what they want. Because, like I've said before, death by 1,000 cuts, all these things are incremental. The sense of injustice is going to build. The game dynamic is employed. And then you have to deal with your ego. You have to deal with the accusations from other people, the smirks, the funny looks. You have to deal with accusations that you're experiencing some type of ineptitude, that you're a slacker. Why is your life not more productive? And all those things, it all feeds from the same snowball effect. And the emotional manipulation of the target is crucial. The game dynamic is played, but of course you're going to lose, and you're drawn into that. So the game dynamic is there already when you're a targeted individual, because you're being ganged up on, and they want you to feel like you're playing a game. And it really pisses you off because they are getting away with stuff, or seemingly getting away with things that are illegal, unfair, unreasonable, and unjust. Okay. That's the bait. And that gives you the emotional reaction because it's all about emotional currency. That's what they need to manipulate. Okay. And if you get attacked by somebody in the process of being a targeted individual, whether it's with that unorthodox behavior, their irrational stuff, the stalling tactics, whatever. Okay. Then of course you're going to lose that battle too. Believe it or not. Well, I mean, you're not losing. We'll talk about that, but it's going to look like it. Okay. As far as what a rational individual would perceive in a situation where you are dealing with someone who is unjustly attacking you, or, you're experiencing an unprovoked assault, whether you're dealing with unfair circumstances or whatever you're dealing with. Well, normally uh, people aren't going to let that happen. But in the case of the targeted individual, you can't expect logic. You can't expect justice. You can't even expect people to stick up for you. And that's usually a pretty big shock to the system, especially of new targets, and that's going to provoke the target. And what's the illusion? You've lost again. It's not fair. And if they can turn it into something that's psychosomatic, that goes into the spiritual realm where you're blaming God or whatever, they love that too. They get you to believe that. But in reality, getting into who's really losing, it is not the target. Okay, so the criteria that is used to create that justification that I talked about, the manufactured justification that targets deal with, where you did it to yourself, or whatever's going on, where they provoke the target, and then of course now the gloves are off and they have the right to do whatever, right? It's like the little games that I talked about where people are playing that in the target individual community, where they're trying to call you out and say something about them, but they have surrounded you and they are just waiting for you to do something hostile so they can do that. And then, well, it's because of this and you deserve it now. And, you said something about me, and then all of a sudden all these people are going to attack you. And in fact, it won't surprise me if that happens probably in the near future, because I've seen these people doing this. And there's a type of encirclement that is used against this channel. I already pretty much know exactly who's involved with it. I'm not even worried about it. I don't even care. But as an example to use while we're doing this, I see that happening. And, if they do it, then they're just going to prove me right now, because I already know who it is. But, getting back to that, manufactured justification that is used, and the real people who are losing, it follows the same criteria. So in reality, okay, not in the targeted individual dispensation of the world's faulty justice system and failed, I don't know, whatever you want to call it for targets, because, you are not being represented. The community has pretty much failed you. The world has failed you. Even some of the honest doctors that you might have dealt with as a targeted individual have failed you. Everybody is basically, it seems like everything is failing you. All right. There's no justice. There's no reasonable recourse for what's going on. You're being persecuted at a higher level that would be something like a Stephen King novel. And nothing is, it seems like they're just getting away with it. Okay. It's a complete 100% failure. But really, if you look at it from a different angle, it's the same. It's basically the same equation. Okay, which goes into the culpability and the way that these people are being set up, because I've talked about that. You're being set up by them, okay, when you're playing this little game, which goes into the crescendo effect, where they want to manipulate and get you to a place where they can provoke you or whatever. But really, they are just inadvertently using this methodology. They are admitting to their own guilt. How? Because they are the aggressors. They are the attackers. And when it comes time for the cows to come home, when it comes time for the chickens to roost, when it comes time for them to admit what is happening, what is brought out in the light, when they're going to be dealing with God or whatever happens, if they get caught, they're going to have to admit that they deserve what they're going to get, because they tried to give it to you. But not only that, they tried to sucker you into it and manufacture a scenario around you and encircle you and persecute you with the same criteria that is going to be used to judge them. The only difference is they earned it and you did not. It's pretty genius, isn't it? That's one thing you got to remember when they're doing that stuff, when you guys are getting these comments and people are judging you or calling you, whatever kind of rumor is out there. And this is the reason we have to do this. And this is why I don't like you and blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. So they are agreeing to their own judgment in advance. And you have to remember that because they are being set up. They're trying to set you up, but they are being set up. They are setting themselves up. And eventually the hammer is going to come down and there's going to be nothing that they can say to stop it because they didn't give you mercy. They tried to set you up. They used the same criteria that legitimately is going to be used against them, and they deserve every bit of it. So that's one thing to remember, guys. And I've talked about that before. These people are they're going to get it, man. And there's going to be nothing they can say. Zero, absolute 100% zero on that one. Okay, let's see what's going on in the comments. Okay, I've probably missed quite a bit on that tangent. Okay, well, it looks like you guys are in a dialogue, and I'm just kind of going through the comments. Nicholas says that he forgives his street level perps, but his hatred and emotional currency is fixated on the puppet master. That makes sense. That makes sense. And for a lot of reasons, because any type of emotional response in an illegitimate situation like the one the targeted individual is thrust into is a mistake. And I talked about that on the other videos, is that you are dealing with things that are not legitimate. Anytime you are baited, anytime you are dealing with that scenario that frustrates you, anytime you are dealing with this unorthodox persecution that is unjustified and uncalled for, you are dealing with nothing more than manipulation. Okay. And a hatred or any legitimate emotions that you have, which all the things and the perceptions you have are legitimate. Have the whole idea is to hijack everything. Okay, whether it's the system of the world, whether it's the true definition of beauty, strength, justice, righteousness, goodness, wisdom. All these things have been hijacked and mingled in with a bunch of things that make them illegitimate. I try not to swear on the live stream. Okay. And your emotions concerning this are legitimate in the sense that you have a right to be angry, but remembering the fact that you were dealing with an illegitimate scenario or a situation that is designed to manipulate you means that any emotions that come out of it are a manufactured response, and it's a motive of these gain stalkers. In order to get that, they need to do these things to you because they want to manipulate you. So in that sense, you're avoiding the manipulation. To sit around and become bitter or angry or let your forehead get red over these people is a waste of energy, time, and resources because they are illegitimate. They have been hijacked. It's like Nicholas said, they're just puppets. That's all it is. And there's a motive behind it. And the puppets are being played and they want to play you. And any kind of emotional response that you give to these people is playing into it. And I'm not saying that there's no getting out of some of it. But if possible, that's a good way to look at it because, hating these people is a real waste of your time and emotions, right? It's a real shame that you have to deal with this. I'm gonna put some sympathy out there for people because I understand what you're dealing with, but it's a waste of time. It literally is. Let's see what else is going on here. Okay, I didn't see Ernie, but welcome to the live stream. You must be up there in the comments somewhere, and I missed it. Okay. Wow. Nicholas Bosmerman says the guy who led my targeting almost got me into the group. He was even showing me vials of liquid. He said it was to and throw at people because it burned. You were not interested in help. I haven't seen that one. Who knows? There's a lot of things that are weird that's a good point in the sense that who knows? I mean, you've all experienced the attacks that targeted individuals can experience. You've all experienced the unorthodox behavior, maybe the food tampering or whatever. Who knows what these people are carrying around with them? You know, makes you wonder. You ever turn your back on these people, man? Okay. Go Eagles. Welcome to the live stream. Sorry you're late. Yeah, well, don't worry about it, man. You can always watch it on the rerun. Okay. And Go Eagle says, I'm trying to save up for a mini RV or Winnebago to travel. I thought about that. In fact, when I bought the vehicle that I got in the accident with, if anybody's been watching the channel for any length of time, I got into a vehicle accident. Somebody pulled out in front of me while I was at work and it totaled it. Of course, I spent $3,000 fixing that thing up and it had 250,000 miles on it. I didn't get any of that money back. Um, but there were some people that reached out from the audience and helped me out. I'd like to thank you guys again. There was a lot of people that reached out and helped me on that one. I'd like to thank you all again. But getting to the point, I bought that vehicle and I'm a delivery guy, but I thought it was a V6 Trailblazer. I thought I was going to be pulling a cargo trailer or something. I mean, I've researched those things. I've thought about it. In fact, I used to talk to an over the road truck driver and one of the strategies uh, was to just be a hard target, to be driving around. I mean, this guy lives basically in his truck, and he goes back home for a very short period of time, and he's out pretty much on the road driving everywhere. Usually around the East Coast and the central Western United States. But I guess that didn't make sense. The central U.S. But he's always on the move, and he said that it helps. Okay, and I thought about it too. I've thought about the off-grid thing. I've thought about van life. I've thought about doing up a cargo trailer and living in it, and just with DoorDash, you could literally pull into a city and just go to work. You don't. I mean, but there's complications. Of course, the world is set up in a way where you can get a temporary address and so on and so forth. There's nomads out there that live that way. Whether you get into, I think his name is Bob Wells or whatever. He talks about a lot of that stuff on his channel where he's been living that way for quite a number of years, moving around. In the summer he goes up to Alaska if possible, and then of course in the winter he goes down to the desert and he just travels around. And then you have to have a state where you reside and have an address, even though you don't have an address. And there's a lot of logistical stuff that you could deal with. Um, but I've thought about it, man. I've looked into it, and it's something that I think a lot of targets consider because the beachhead is formed against targets where your neighbors can become involved, people in your community can become involved, the authorities in your community can become involved, and it can be very overwhelming, and it just makes you want to take off. And we're all looking for the same thing, right? And targeted individuals, they want their life back. They want freedom, if nothing else. And one of the things that comes up when people talk about that is I want them, if they're going to do this stuff to me, if they're going to play this game, I want to make them spend as much money as possible. Chasing you all around the United States in a Winnebago or something. I don't know. It depends on what you're dealing with. I don't think the chat is available on the reruns, Mats and Miles. I apologize for that. I've never seen a chat that you guys have any answers for that? I've never seen one that had the chat available later. It was always just the video, I'm pretty sure. But somebody would know that. I've never seen it. Yeah, I've never seen it. Never seen the chat available on the replays. Anybody have anything out there they want to add to this discussion? Any questions? You can go on a different topic. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Go whatever direction you want with it. You can do questions about gang stalking. You can do Bible questions. Whatever. I'm here for a little bit more. We've talked about a lot of the stuff. I mean, I must have done at least 2 hours, 3 hours worth of live today, just today. Okay. Well, okay. Well, I'll let you guys think of something. Wait. Bora Bora. Did YouTube change that around July or August? Never mind. Okay. Um, well, we talked about all these things that are setups for targeted individuals, the bait. We talked about the gaslighting, the manufactured justification. We talked about the game dynamic, the illogical behavior, the unorthodox behavior, the way targets are provoked, the fact that they employ the ego, put you in the game dynamic. They use an unfair scenario. They use encirclement. They infiltrate the target. They use all these things in a type of multi-angled attack at the target from multiple directions, from multiple different puppets with multiple techniques. And a lot of these things involve illusions, and they also involve things that you cannot see. They involve things that could be, technologically based. People are going to be attacked with stuff like that. They're also going to be attacked demonically, which I've talked about the fact that, there are a lot of things that targets deal with when it comes to the directed energy weapon stuff that, in my opinion, those things originated in this, from the spiritual dimension. So even when you're dealing with demonic stuff, it's not to say that you are not dealing with technology on that realm. And it is designed for that type of crescendo to get the target into a place where they have that split, where they have a nervous breakdown, where they are provoked into doing something, whether it become incarcerated or temporarily held in a psych center or whatever. And if the bigger the reaction, the better, and preferably max fun for the perps is to get you to freak out on somebody that's not really involved in your scenario, which happens. I've seen it. I've come to the wrong conclusion before. It's very easy for targets to do that because not only are they turning you into your own worst enemy in the sense that they're sensitizing you and conditioning you and getting you in the place where you're processing information differently. They want to reprogram. They want you to read into things. They want to gaslight you into internalizing all this stuff. And if they can provoke you into doing something like that, then you just beat yourself up over that. But you have to remember, especially if you're one of those people out there that have done this, because it's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of targets. Don't feel guilty about it. You have to remember how you got to where you are. And it had nothing to do with you signing an open full disclosure agreement that you were going to be stalked and harassed until you started to kind of slip, because everybody has that problem, and it's understandable. When you see a lot of the things that people are dealing with, you can't give in to that. You cannot do the job of the stalkers. Never beat yourself up, man. Always forgive yourself. Remember how you got to where you are. It's easy to forget that. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to look at the comments again. Okay. Nicholas Boserman says, my perp leader even tried to help me with V2K. told me to get good at rhetorical statements, and it did help. They accuse you of being a pervert, so you say back why you are a pervert, and it shuts. Okay, well, I don't know. That's interesting though, because you have to be careful. They want you to pay attention to them, and a lot of targets that are dealing with V2K or demonic voices, you get to the point where you just start ignoring them completely. They don't like that. They want you to react. They want to trigger you, and so on and so forth. But they also, want to get you listening, and they will use techniques like that. A lot of people will become involved in the new age. They'll become involved in the occult, and there's that secret knowledge and hidden wisdom. And I've talked about that before, that they will use that to entice people and get their attention. You know, it's when the psychic tells somebody something that is relevant to their life that brings them back and turns them into a repeat customer. Wow, that really helped me out. Right. Oh, you knew. Oh, that really happened. I got that job opportunity that you were talking about, or whatever is going on. And it's important to remember that it's a tactic that is used to get you to pay attention. It is a tactic that is used to deceive even the elite. Okay. Even if you're dealing with technologically based stuff, they want you to listen. They want you to pay attention. Demons want you to listen to them. They want you to engage in having a conversation with them. If you're one of those targets that deal with voice to skull, whether it's demonic or technologically based, they want you to listen. They want you to interact, and they will get your attention any way they can. And if that unorthodox, accusation or all that negative stuff stops working, they'll think of something else to get you to listen. Mats and Miles, how bad are the lies they must be telling to make people I've known for all those years willing to think that they may have been wrong about the decent impression that they had about me for 40 years. Well, they want you to dwell on it too, you know, and a lot of targets deal with it. How these people become involved. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think some of them were encircling and getting around you the whole time. And that sounds paranoid. But I've talked about how deep this stuff goes. And, you start wondering how these things are happening. You start wondering how all these things are playing out. But I believe that. I believe that there's a plan for people. I believe in the spiritual foundations of gang stalking. And I believe that you are encircled. A lot of people talk about deja vu and dreams and all these things. It's a buildup. The crescendo effect goes back into childhood, and the encirclement of the perps, of the puppets, is part of the orchestration. Okay. And a lot of the people that you may believe, and I know you're probably thinking of family members and stuff like that or whatever, but I don't know, man. The things that I've experienced over time, and I've been doing this for quite a while, would lead me to believe that, if somebody turns against you like that, um, I don't think they probably were ever your friend, or whatever. And the whole game of I thought you were a decent person or whatever, that is used to manipulate. That is used to get that emotional response. And of course, what's going to happen? Any rational person, any normal person would be dwelling on those. Oh my gosh, I really cared about these people. I can't believe they think these horrible things about me. And it is designed to get under your skin. It is designed for that emotional response. It's designed to get you dwelling on those things. Let it go, man. Let it go. And some people are brought into this, and they buy into disinformation. Some of them are giving into social dynamics, and they see all the other people around you, and they just kind of betray you. But you have to remember, it's like I was talking about when you have this awakening involving gang stalking and harassment. The world isn't what you thought it was. The people around you are not who you thought they were, and everything is going to change. And dwelling on that kind of stuff, I mean, it's a sad truth, but I wouldn't put a whole lot into it, man. That's at least what I came up with. Okay, Pamela Barone says in a previous video, at the end of a video about a month ago, you mentioned briefly and did elaborate about bad ear pain some targets experience. I have been experiencing Oh, let me see. I got the comment. I have to move it up a little bit. Since childhood. Okay. Well, we did. We talked about some of the signs and symptoms of things that can either be demonic or human technologically based. Some of the correlations and coincidences, uh, you know, pun intended, that are around events that targets deal with, whether it's the increased tinnitus, the pressure in the ear, the headaches, the physical symptoms, the sudden tiredness that can happen to targets, other things that seem to be very uh, prevalent in the targeted individual experience that other people are talking about. And I don't think it's by mistake. I think that it, is a sign of either one or the other of those things or both. Okay, so the ear pain and stuff like that, the pressure, you might lose hearing in one or both ears temporarily. You might feel a pressure change. You might have strange sensations like magnetic sensations in your body, or vibrations, or it feels like there's a magnetic field switch around your body, kind of like when you get an X-ray. It feels really weird, or like you get the hairs on the back of your neck kind of feeling standing up, except it'll go all the way across the top of your head. You might have that in conjunction with ear pain or increased tinnitus, ringing in the ears, bell tones, loss of hearing in one or both ears temporarily. And it'll be right before something will happen. And those things, I don't, like I said, I don't think they're coincidental. Go Eagles says in his town, if you have a felony, the cops make a deal and then they own you. Yeah, a lot of times that'll happen. I've seen a lot of people do that too, and they don't get in trouble. They get away with everything as long as they turn into informants. Pamela Baron says they keep saying nothing is wrong. It's excruciating for me. Of course, they're never going to admit any of these things. They're never going to give any affirmation to you as a target. And I've talked about that. It depends on who they are. If they're the perp, of course, it's plausible deniability. They're not going to give you any affirmation. If they're people who don't know, they can't accept it for the very reason that it's their mental health involved. If they knew the things that you do as a target, they would be paranoid, and they want to live their lives. It's like that movie Island, or The Island with Leonardo DiCaprio. People would get bitten by a shark or whatever. They're all having fun. It's a community. Everybody loves one another, and then you know there's somebody who is ruining everybody's fun, and they just kick the guy out in the middle of the island, and make him leave. It's like people were ready to bury the person because just they have their lives to live. You're getting in their way now, and it's unfortunate. And that's what I was talking about earlier. When you find out who all the people are around you, people talk a good game. Oh, we care about you. We got your back. Blah 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 blah. But really, when it comes down to it, they're not all that, and they're kind of bullshitting themselves. And when a target experiences persecution, their life is thrown upside down. It's just a matter of how inconvenient you become, and they will leave your ass in the dust, unfortunately. And I've experienced it. Cowherd, welcome to the live stream. I'm at the point where my family is starting to hate me because they can't believe gang stalking is real. I've been getting gang stalked for 5 years and I'm pretty screwed mentally at this point. I'm sorry, honey. Yeah, I know, man. We're all there. And I totally can relate with your experience. And as a new targeted individual, it's even more intense for you because, you're experiencing that type of acclamation. And it sounds like you've tried to explain this to people that either care about you or you believe care about you. And that's very difficult for targets, right? Because, like I just explained, if people are not, if they're not in on this stuff, they look at you as either inconvenient or a sad case. You're just crazy. You're just having hallucinations or whatever. And it's very frustrating. Trying to get affirmation from anyone but a targeted individual is not a good idea. If any new targets are watching this, please listen to me. Okay. You're not going to get affirmation from people who don't know what this is like. It's not going to happen. Not only is it frustrating, not only is it laborious and a type of energy vampire when you're trying to explain this, it's a complete and utter waste of time. It is. And I would suggest for all the new targets out there, for any of you, um, it's like when you're at work and there's something that you have to do that's tedious, right? And it sucks, whatever it is, but it's a job, right? You're getting paid. You're not there to have fun. You're not there playing Wheel of Fortune. Usually, when you have a job, it's the things that you're being paid to do because other people don't want to do it, and you turn it into a game. You turn it into something that is more tolerable for you. Okay. And I would suggest that as a targeted individual, especially if you're new at this, turn it into a game in the sense that you don't know anything about gang stalking. I don't believe anybody is doing these things to me, right? You're not noticing any of that, right? And it's not that you have to just all out lie or whatever or be ridiculous, but in the sense that you are winning every time that you don't react to the harassment, whether you're just non-responsive or whether you are not trying to explain these things to people who are obviously not going to understand. Um, you win. You win, and they hate it. They hate targets that don't react. They hate it. When you are not trying to explain these things to people because they know that it's designed to do that. The science behind gang stalking, the equation that you are dealing with involves you, becoming emotional and feeling depressed and banging your head against the brick wall, trying to get affirmation from people, trying to find a solution, trying to get your life back, trying to figure out all these things. And when you don't do it, you win, period. Okay. When you're not sitting around grinding metal, sitting up at night, you win. When you're not trying to explain this to people who either don't care or don't, have the capability of understanding, you win. When you don't react and you start focusing on other things and looking at stuff that you can control in your life and improve, whether it be your diet or your education or whatever, and just maybe even for just a little while, forget about all these things that people are doing, you win. When you don't understand or notice the smirks, all the little subtle tactics that are being used, the stalling tactics, when you don't hear the directed conversation and people are trying so desperately to yank your chain, you win. When you don't give in to the sensitization and the conditioning, when you're not bothered by the street theater and because you've watched Dr. Defacto that they're probably not reading your mind and it's an illusion and they just want to manipulate you and they're trying to get under your skin, you don't get nervous, you don't get scared, and you don't react, you win. Okay, because it's all about the response. It's all about the reaction. Everything that you're going to be dealing with has a motive. There is always a motive and a reason for everything you're dealing with. Everybody wants something, and that's what they want. They want you to feel like shit. They want you to feel embarrassed in front of friends and family. They want you to be walking around with your head pointing towards the ground, wondering how all these people could believe these lies about you. Don't give them what they want. Let's move into this a little bit here. I'm going to go back into the comments. Yeah, a gang stalked free guy with eagle eye. They are willing to do anything for our attention. Absolutely. Bora Bora says it's been 18 years for you. Wow. Yeah, welcome to the Veterans Club, man. Yeah, I've been doing the overt thing since 93. So technically, it's been over 30 years. I always get that confused. But of course, it started before that. Oh, I get cramps holding this phone, guys. I don't know how long we've been doing this, man, but I was holding that phone with the same arm. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, Pamela Barone says, thanks for addressing this is horrible. Absolutely. Let's see this here. I got to switch around here. Okay. The target is always wrong. Yeah. Gang stalking free guy with the eagle eye. That's a cool name. I'm gonna have to abbreviate it, but at least it rhymes. Okay. Okay, we got some other stuff here. Gang stalked free guy with the eagle eyes. I get affirmation from Dr. Defacto videos and Zeph Daniel videos. Yeah, I like Zeph. Zeph Daniels is he's got great material. Um, and like I said before, I've mentioned him. I've listened to him for hours, man. When you got that crazy stuff to do, when you're trying to figure out what's going on. I had to visqueen off a whole apartment one time, man. You want to talk about crazy? I mean, are you curious? You should have seen it, guys. And I listened to Zeph Daniels the whole time. I did it, man. I mean, I literally had to visqueen off an apartment, man. I mean, you got to be kidding me. You want to talk about fuming and crazy stuff? My gosh. Okay, let's see here. Okay, and I'm moving through the comments here. Andrew Max is likewise welcome to the live stream. And I think you talk about V2K in your videos. Is that correct, Mr. Mac? Because I haven't seen you in here before. Yeah, that's what I thought. Are you still dealing with a lot of V2K currently? Is it still something that you deal with all the time, or is it backed off? Has it changed ever? Okay, he says he does. Yeah. And of course, there's nothing that makes somebody look nuttier than something like that, right? Hearing voices. Oh my goodness. Oh, how about that? Yeah. Yeah, it's that's a tough one there. 24/7, my gosh, man. Yeah, that's got to be difficult. Wow. Is there anything else that you deal with, or is it just the V2K? I've noticed that people that deal with voice to skull or with 24-hour demonic voices, that they don't experience a lot of break-ins or other things. A lot of times they'll deal with street theater, but usually when people get a lot of V2K, sometimes it's the major symptom they're dealing with. Is that true for you, or do you deal with break-ins and all the other stuff too? Yeah. Yeah. You're crazy. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm waiting for all right. Do you deal with the break-ins, Andrew? Anything like that going on? Food tampering or anything else, or is it just V2K? Oh wow, so you got the whole full meal deal. Wow. That's pretty rare. I mean, you got a lot of stuff you're dealing with. And if I remember correctly, you dealt with a lot of workplace harassment, is that correct? Okay. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of the people out there that seem like a very coherent individual. Um and that's something that I think would refute the whole idea that you're experiencing schizophrenia. Okay, which kind of goes into what I mentioned earlier with that factitious documentary, right? Because that girl was labeled as factitious because she wasn't trying to explain that little green men were walking through walls or whatever. She had a story that fit together, that had almost a type of archaeological proof to it, you know, and it didn't involve things that were obviously delusional. Okay, and people that seem coherent, like Andrew, it seems like a regular guy you could just meet on the street and talk to. And the only thing that would be off is, of course, if you never experienced being a target individual, is when someone starts talking about hearing voices or dealing with persecution or food tampering or whatever. Otherwise, you'd never think anything of it. It's like all targets are supposed to be walking around drooling or something. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, it's nice to have you in here on the live stream. Um, what else could we talk about, guys? We're gonna make this one of the longest live streams that we've done so far. I tried to get super chat in there, but you know what? I don't know what's going on with YouTube. I think that'd be kind of hilarious. Um, I've seen people do that before, where your comment will be put in bold letters and stuff like that. But I wasn't able to do that, and it's hard for me to go through these comments sometimes. So, even more, I probably have to have a moderator so I didn't miss the super chat. That would not be good. Okay, GoPro 2999. I think therapy is smart for targeted individuals. What kind of therapy? Huh. Not quite sure where you're going with that one. Because usually when targeted individuals go to a psychologist, they get diagnosed with a mental illness, and the frustration is usually mounted. That'd be interesting though if you could find a doctor out there that understood what was really happening with people who experience gang stalking and harassment. That'd be a completely different scenario. That would work. I would have to agree then. Good luck with that though. You probably have a better chance in finding a priest or a minister that would understand these types of things. Someone who's experienced demonic, scenarios. Because I've talked about this before. Targeted individuals are dealing with a lot of demonic oppression, even if you're dealing with the human puppetry or the government scenario. I think it's still demonic. I think, especially when you run into guys like Andrew who's dealing with all these things. I don't know. I mean, there's demonic stuff involved in that, and a lot of ministers have experienced those things. They might not be what you would consider a targeted individual, but I know a lot of them that I've heard them talk about this stuff. They would never come out and say, "Oh, these gang stalking people are, I don't know. There's got to be something to it." They would never dare do that because, of course, they've got to look, sane. But you hear them talk about the same things, whether they're in church and all of a sudden they start having intrusive thoughts, or things that would almost be like scrupulosity, or feeling different types of sensations and attacks, maybe in their home, or experiencing health effects, sudden pain or affliction, or even having people come up to them with what targeted individuals would consider street theater. In fact, I watched a guy's sermon the other day. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was talking about that, where people were literally walking up to him and telling him things that they should not know. And he perceived that as a type of demonic attack. And the whole video had to do with the increased demonic activity in the end times. But this guy is not somebody who would ever talk about, you know, gang stalking or whatever. But he had experienced the same things, in my opinion, that targeted individuals deal with in street theater. Okay, that's classic street theater. When people walk up to you and tell you something they should not know, or personal information, they attack you with it or whatever. That's basically the same thing. And I've heard also, a lot of pastors talk about the voices and stuff. In fact, I'll mention this other guy because I do believe I have him in the playlist. That's Neil T. Anderson, and he talks a lot about that stuff. Okay. The confusing aspect with a lot of the deliverance ministries that are out there is when people believe that that Christians can be demon possessed, and I think it's just confusion because people can be severely oppressed, but they might even exhibit symptoms or symptomology or sequelae of what a lot of people would consider demonic possession, but they are not possessed. They have been infiltrated. Their lives have gotten to the point where they are so affected by the demons that are harassing them that they just look crazy, or they might have even gotten into substance abuse, which plays into it. And it's a type of equation that is done by the spiritual dimension to get a person into a place where they become vulnerable to that possession. But in some of the cases that you're going to deal with out there, they believe that Christians are possessed by demons or they have a demon and they got to be delivered from a demon. Well, no, they are around the individual, which is the technical, terminology for oppression, but they're not possessing the person. They want to, but the only way that they can affect them is to severely and incrementally, tear down their world and oppress them in a way where they can manipulate and control them, maybe even feed off their energy or who knows, just torture them. So when you get into speaking with anybody, if before I would try to tell anybody, I wouldn't tell a therapist. I've talked to preachers before though. Some of them, they don't want to admit it, but some of them are a little bit more. You might be surprised. Andrew Mack said these people are evil. Obviously, they are, which for me is proof of the spiritual foundation of this. Well, it is. Andrew Mack says that it is a sin. It is. It's very sinful to gang stalk and harass people and to oppress them, to gaslight them and destroy them and so on and so forth. This stuff is obviously evil. Okay, I'm moving into, let's see what we got here. Bora Bora says, I know of other channels who don't use super chats because YouTube takes 40. I never heard that. Really? I didn't know about that. 40%? Woo. I thought it was way less than that. I thought it was a pretty small percentile. I didn't know that. That's ridiculous. I'll have to look at that. Well, I didn't set it up anyway. I think there's different things that people can use. I would think that it would be pretty unjustified to be taking 40% of the super chats. That's ridiculous, but I don't know. I'd have to look into it. Wow. A good heads up on that one. Okay, and I missed a comment by GoPro. Fix your health, finances, and start changing the scenes. Ultimately, gang stalking comes to an end as we gain back our peace. Yeah, that's good advice. That's good. Focus on the things that you can change. Focus on the things that you have control over, the things in your environment that you can affect, the things that they don't have control over. They want you to go into those areas where they have control, where they have power, where they can dangle things in front of you or control or hinder you, and they like that. They absolutely do. Okay. 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 All right. Well, Nicholas Bosman says, hell yes, they are cowards. Takes tons of people plus military grade weaponry to mess with one person. Yeah, it's completely unfair. That's why when people buy into the game dynamic, they're playing into the strategy of gang stalking. Well, guys, we've had quite the live stream. I don't even know how long we've been going here, but it looks like we've gotten through all the burning desires that I talked about. We went through a lot of things. We went through the setup that target individuals deal with, the internalized method of gaslighting for manufactured justification, the way targets are provoked, the infiltration, the encirclement that they are dealing with. the bait that a lot of targets will give into the illogical behavior, the unorthodox behavior, the unreasonable attacks, the unprovoked attacks. All those things are used as bait to get the target to react, to get them emotionally invested in the activity that the gang stalkers are in control of. They want to critique your ego. They want to get you to internalize the whole scenario, and they want you to believe that you deserve it, and they want to believe that all these things are justified. And I mentioned earlier, and I want to emphasize that again, that the criteria that they are using to bait you and get you into this manufactured little system where they can accuse and manipulate you is going to be used against them. Okay. When they accuse you of something, especially if they're baiting you and playing a little game with you, they are admitting in advance that the judgment that they are going to receive for doing these things is just, because they are not giving you mercy. Not only that, they are persecuting you and torturing you. Okay. And when it finally comes for the cows to come home, when it finally gets to the point where they have to, own up to this stuff, what are they going to have to say now that they've already passed judgment on several of you? Well, judgment is going to have to be accepted by them, isn't it? They are signing their own death warrant every time they play these games with you. And it's important to remember that. Well, guys, I'd like to thank all of you for participating in the live stream. Put your comments in there for ideas for future videos. Unfortunately, I'm going to be having a lot of time off because I'm sick with the kidney stent, and I have to take it easy. And hopefully that's going to work out, and I can get that kidney stone removed or pass the kidney stone or whatever. I'd appreciate your prayers in that area. And like I always say, I appreciate all of you who help support the channel. Thank you. God bless you. Be good to yourselves and be safe. Have a good night.